So what you're looking at is a list of Kobe Bryant's Hall of Fame teammates in seasons wherein that player made the All-Star game. Okay? You're looking at Kobe Bryant's 3 Hall of Fame teammates in seasons wherein that player made the All-Star game. Okay? So you have 8 seasons for Shaquille O'Neal, 3 for Pau Gasol, and 1 for Dwight Howard. A few other of Kobe's teammates made All-Star teams. None of them were Hall of Famers. You know, Eddie Jones, Nick Van Exel for 1 year, and Andrew Bynum. But for the purposes of the conversation I'm going to have today, I limit this inquiry to Hall of Famers in their prime. How do I define in their prime? Well, they went to the All-Star game. There's a lot of conversation about whether one making the All-Star game, All-Star team, means one is in their prime. I understand that. For the purposes of this conversation, just to have an objective criteria, I'm going to go with selection to the All-Star game. You know, being one of the best 25 or 30 players in the league, as being as sufficing for that player being in their prime. Maybe not at their peak, but in their prime. Okay? So I've got a total of 12 seasons there. And Kobe has 5 titles. Okay? So it is my contention that this ratio, if you will, of winning the chip with 12 such seasons is the best ratio, if you will, of any player in NBA history. Okay? Now, that's not exactly true, but I'm going to explain why. So I had a subscriber specifically asked me to lay out why it is my contention that the winner's argument that for so long rightfully belonged to Bill Russell, it is my contention that the winner's argument now belongs to Kobe Bryant. Bill Russell, legendarily 11 NBA championships, 8 straight. But it is my contention that, first of all, like, nobody's going to win 11 straight championships. Okay, just the nature of the game. There's just too much free agency. God, I mean, up until, for so many different reasons, up until very recently, only a handful of teams were actually trying to win the NBA championship. So that isn't going to happen. So, if you add the caveat, relative to the help that player had, Kobe had is the greatest winner in NBA history. In other words, if you were to put the same amount of talent around Kobe Bryant, he would win even more than 11 out of 13. Okay? So I did this video about a year ago. And so what I'm going to do here is just flesh it out a little bit more thoroughly in relation to Kobe and Bill Russell. Okay, so this may be one of my longer videos, but hopefully I won't bore you too badly. What you have in front of you now is a list of NBA championship teams, rather, and listed by season, and affixed to that is the number of Hall of Fame players that made the All-Star team. Okay, so this is from 1957. So I started pretty much at the beginning of the Boston Dynasty, and I went all the way up to 2014, mainly because that's about the last season wherein there's I don't think there's anyone. There's only a couple of players that are still in the league that were playing in 2014, and only a few principals. I think like Steph Curry and Kevin Durant. But for the 2014 Spurs that won the championship that year, all of those players are retired. Okay, so as I filtered this list for Hall of Famers, I'm looking for players that are in the Hall of Fame. Okay, and then I just kind of use common sense if I'm dealing with somebody, like a LeBron, that's obviously going to the Hall of Fame. Okay, so this list goes from 1956 to 2014. Okay, so if you scroll down this list, there are very few ones. And even when there are some ones, that team typically did have another Hall of Famer on the team. Just for whatever reason, that player didn't make the All-Star team that year. Like, for instance, the 78 Bullets with Elvin Hayes. I believe Bobby Dandridge and Wes Unseld were also on that team. Okay. Then you look at I think obviously the 89 team. Joe Dumars just didn't make it that year. He may have been injured. Then 98, Scottie Pippen, famously he was injured for the beginning of the season. Scottie Pippen ended up making the All-NBA team, but not the All-Star team. Okay. Tim Duncan in 2003. That may be a case of wherein I'm not sure if Tony Parker had really emerged as a great player that year. But my overall point here is that in almost all of these cases, it takes at least 2 Hall of Famers to win the NBA championship. Okay? So if we use that as an assumption, okay, that it takes 2 Hall of Famers to win the NBA championship, then it would be fair to say that a component to a championship team is having 2 Hall of Famers in their prime. Okay? So what I mean by help is when we look at these great players, what did they do when they were one of 2 Hall of Famers in their prime? Okay? When these players had the help that has been sufficient for quite a few teams to win the NBA championship. Okay? When these players had another Hall of Famer in their prime, did they win the chip? And how many of those such seasons did they require in order to win the NBA championship? Okay? A lot of these GOAT discussions really come down to what is your understanding of how much help the player had? What do you think? And so, LeBron fans will get into a lot of really subjective arguments. They'll say, "Oh, well, D Wade was past his prime, et cetera, et cetera." Well, I mean, if we want to have an objective criteria, okay, we got to look at how did the player meet the threshold for being an outstanding player in the league that particular season, okay, and were they a great player, okay? So that is in selection to the All-Star team and being a Hall of Famer, okay? So obviously Kobe has less than half the chips as a Bill Russell, okay? Obviously Kobe has half the chips as a Bill Russell, okay? So again, what I mean is relative to the amount of help that the player had. So here's a list of Bill Russell's Hall of Fame teammates, okay? In seasons wherein those players went to the All-Star game, okay? So there's a total of 26 names here, okay? And if you just do the math, we see that Kobe's number, 5 titles, deriving from 12 prime Hall of Fame seasons, means that it took Kobe 2.4 Hall of Fame seasons to win the chip. It took Bill Russell 2.54 Hall of Fame seasons to win the chip. Okay? So what you're looking at is these are the players that have the highest or the best ratio, if you will, of Hall of Fame players to win the chip. Okay? Now, if you see the 2 players ahead of Kobe, obviously Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. Okay? So you say, okay, well then, this is another data point that says that Michael Jordan is the best player of all time. He's even this number. He required the least to win a chip, and that should be that. Well, here's the problem. If I look at Kobe Bryant's number, if I look at Bill Russell's number, if I look at Tim Duncan's number, Hakeem Olajuwon, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, LeBron James, Shaquille O'Neal, there's no one great Hall of Famer that can claim all of their chips. Well, that's not true of Magic Johnson. Okay? So if I look at Kobe Bryant's 5 chips, there's no one great Hall of Famer that can claim all 5 of his chips. If I look at Bill Russell, no one player can claim all 11 of his chips. Tim Duncan, there's no one player that can claim all 5 of his chips. So in other words, Tim Duncan won without David Robinson and with David Robinson, without Tony Parker and with Tony Parker. Bill Russell won without Sam Jones, with Sam Jones, without Bob Cousy, with Bob Cousy. Okay? Kobe Bryant won with Shaq, without Shaq. Okay? Even Magic Johnson actually did get to the finals without Kareem. Kareem won a chip with Magic and without Magic. So to say that Michael Jordan has the best number here, you have to be dismissing Scottie Pippen as basically incidental to those chips. Okay? You have to be saying that Scottie Pippen is basically a role player because there's no record of Michael Jordan winning without him. So now, I mean, you could say, you could make the case. I mean, that's actually true of Derek Fisher with regard to Kobe. But is Derek Fisher really analogous to Scottie Pippen? Let me show you why Scottie Pippen deserves every bit the credit for those 6 chips. So what you have here is a regular season metric. So I went back and I looked at players who had scored 1,300 points in the season. Okay, not a hell of a lot, you know. That's 82 game season. That's like 15, 16 points a game. 1,300 points, 300 assists, 150 offensive rebounds, and shot 46% from the field. These are the players that have done it at least 5 times. Everybody on this list, except Alex English and Nikola Jokic, are top 75 players. Okay? Obviously, the only reason Nikola Jokic isn't is because he isn't retired. Everybody on this list is a first ballot Hall of Famer. Okay? Scottie Pippen did this 8 times in 1 decade. Okay? So you really got to get this. Okay? This is an accomplishment that pretty much guarantees that you're going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer if you do it at least 5 times. Scottie did it 8 times. No one else during that decade, during the 90s, did it more than 5. Karl Malone. 6. Well, Karl Malone did it 5 during the 90s. He did it 6 overall. Okay? Scottie Pippen has more accomplished this more than Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan didn't get the offensive rebounds. Wasn't really his job. But the point is, this right here makes Scottie Pippen a first ballot Hall of Famer. I didn't mention anything about the fact that he is arguably the greatest defender of the decade. Okay? On top of this, on top of being one of only 5 players in NBA history to lead his team in all 5 statistical categories for a season. On top of that, he's actually probably the greatest defender of the decade. Okay? So, what do we do about that? What do we do with the 6 chips at the top of that list? Okay? Both players, the 2 players that have the best ratio, or that needed the least to win the chip, Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan. What do we do about that? Okay? I want you to think about something. The Golden State Warriors had arguably 2 of the best 3 players in the league for 4 years. Okay. Was it 3 years? They won the chip and came close to winning it a third time. Probably would have, if not for injury. Okay. Does it take a lot to consider that maybe the Bulls won 6 championships during the 90s because they had 2 of the best 3 players in the league? Okay. The Lakers had arguably, certainly 2 of the best 3 players in the league. Okay, we can argue about, whose team the early 2000 Lakers were, but certainly, when we talk about the best players in the league that during that era, we're really talking about 3, maybe 4 names, and both of them are on the Lakers. That got them 3 chips. Can we imagine for a second that if you've got the best 2 players in the league for a decade, can we imagine that it's really that difficult to think that you would win 6 chips? Okay? So, to my mind, unless a player has a chip has proven the ability to win with and without every other great player that they played with, to me, that this number isn't valid. You can't really say that a given player had the best number. You can't really say that they needed the least help. They just happened to play with one of the best players in the league for an entire decade. Okay? So, with that said, the best number on this list is Kobe Bryant. Okay? Kobe Bryant required substantially less than every other player on this list. Okay? So, I hope this clears it up. Certainly I'm open to discussion and disagreement. I'm sure I'll get a lot of it, but this is kind of what it is. This is kind of what it is. You need 2 Hall of Famers to win the NBA championship. What did the player do when they were one of 2 Hall of Famers? What did they do? Okay. Personally, I am not a big fan of Kevin Durant. Okay. That number at the bottom of that list is why. Okay. He has had talent. He just has not converted those seasons to championships. So this is what I mean when Kobe is the greatest singular component. Okay. Kobe, was a greater component to a championship team than even Bill Russell. By the way, here's another aside. We could sort of tighten this criteria even more, and it would argue even stronger for Kobe, because believe it or not, Bill Russell was not all NBA for all 11 of his championships. Okay. So 2 of his chips, you could say he really was kind of carried, whereas Kobe was all NBA for every one of his championships. Okay. So, and he wasn't even an all-star for one of his championships, Bill Russell, that is. He wasn't even an all-star. That last season, 1969, John Havlicek was the best player, but Bill Russell did make the all-star team. Okay. So, believe it or not, Kobe Bryant required less help to win a chip than Bill Russell. And because he demonstrated the ability to win both with and without Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant has the strongest case to be the greatest winner, and the greatest component to a championship team in NBA history.